What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and I just got first place at the MCS tournament hosted by MBT. It is absolutely crazy that I managed to stream the whole tournament, and even open-handed was able to go all the way to the finals and secure the victory. It really makes me miss the tier element format in the TCG. Well, you guys can see on deck my screen, and I will give you guys a quick breakdown of what I played, and also some differences from the last deck list I posted, some reasonings, and then also the side deck I used because Top Cut was a best of 3. Also, I had some really crazy games on here, so if you want to go see how I used a lot of these tech cards or some of the crazy panouts that happened, go check out my Twitch channel where you can find the VODs, and you'll see exactly what happened. It'll be really interesting, I promise. Maybe I'll even insert a few clips at the end of this video because I know a couple of you have been asking for some gameplay. Anyways, I'll get into the deck profile. You can see here, this is very similar to what I posted before. The only change in the main deck is I have removed one of the orange lights for the third DD Crow. So the reason for doing this is that orange light is not as consistent as I'd like it to be. With the fairies being semi-limited here, only Midor being a 3, it often feels like you can't reliably draw with another card, and having that dead card in hand is very, not helpful, I guess. Also, I wanted more space in the extra deck, so removing Baron was fine, and that left me kind of not needing it. I did want more disruption, though, for when I went second, so I figured Crow was good for the mirror match, while also giving me good access to Mudragon in many different game states, and Mudragon is a great card. It beats Sullick, it beats Imperm, it beats Kikala's target itself, it beats Perla Rhino. It is very good at playing through fields, and also when your opponent lets you mill on their first turn. So, did like having access to Crow and Mudragon. Without the Bestials, it's really hard to summon it if you don't play other Darks, so was happy with this. Obviously, this card is bad versus a lot of the stun decks, and that will contribute to a little bit of frustration, and it did happen a bit to me, but it's not the end of the world, and I think it's ultimately worth it over other tech cards that are maybe not as strong in the mirror match, which I can discuss a bit later. Everything else in the main deck should be the same. I still think the Millers are pretty good. You do have to be pretty well versed in the deck to use these to the absolute max potential. But Calback at the very least is very good as a disruption, and Nihito can still be used as an extender. I also think they add consistency to the deck, especially with all the cards being semi-limited. That is something I think you need. And versus the non-tier matchups, they are nuts. So I still recommend playing as many of the Ishizu cards as you can. Now, the other tech cards, we've kept Imperm because I think it's the best into tier elements going second, with the absence of Bestials. Sorry, besides Maxi. It stops your opponents get colors, meaning they can't get to Scream, which is incredibly good in the grind game, and potentially Crime or Sullick as well. It can also be used in other spots, and it's good versus other decks as well, so this is probably one of the best hand traps you could be using. Talents is great because he goes first. If you get Maxied on a Rhino Heart, you can go Kit, search Scream, rip a card out of their hand, or draw 2 depending on what you need, pass and not feel that uncomfortable, or even going second, it can help you break some fields by dismantling their setup. It's really good versus tier if they're not careful because they don't put on multiple tier names and you use Talents. Then they also lose access to Sullick, and sometimes you're disallowing so many interruptions at once that you can't actually break their field. However, it is not perfect, and people are playing around it, especially in how they set up their fields. It is not the best going second, but it is, regardless, a fantastic going first. Probably the best card you can have outside of Scream or Planet. And then obviously Maxi, you shouldn't have to explain. Yes, it's bad versus Flu or Stun decks, but this card is nuts, so we play 3. The extra deck is where I saw the biggest change as far as the rest of my decks. The other deck I played, Zeraboros, Asa, and Baguska, and Barone. So I already discussed why I got rid of Barone. I also got rid of the Zeraboros because I felt like I never ever needed it. It was just only coming up like weird games with Snow over and over again, and those just were extremely unlikely and could be used for other things at the same time. No Asa because there's less Earth Fairies in the deck for one, but also part of the appeal to it before was you could force out their interrupts with Asa and then turn the Asa into a Sprint. Now that Sprint, the body you make with Asa is fairly irrelevant, and it feels like a lot more of a resource sink to make it than it did before, or in the TCG. So we've omitted it from this extra deck. As for Baguska, I felt like Fluanderies would be not played. People did end up playing it, and I played against 2 of them, which was surprising me because Mappa 1 and 1 Prosperity makes the deck extremely bricky. Also, no statue means it's not even an auto win going first, so I don't think the deck is very good. However, I did play against 2 of them, and I did beat both, but I did not play Baguska because I didn't think it was necessary for that. If I got shifted, I'd end on Dryden instead, which I'll explain in a second as well. So then the last card I cut, or that was everything I cut, right? Yeah, that was everything I cut. And to make space for a couple extra deck cards, the 3 cards zoo package was probably the most impactful one that I made. I'm extremely happy that I chose to play these cards because Chalk 9 is a generic rank 4. You can make this any 2/4, same as you would Duel or anything else. And then you can make Borbo or Dryden on top, or both, one at a time, giving you access to 5 materials as Zeus, or 4 materials plus a Dryden pop, which is nice. So you can force out interrupts to the Borbo, attacking directly, Dryden, force like Isulik, and then after Zeus on top, wipe the field. And then also 2 more materials for the Zeus as defense. So this card was really, really good for that purpose as well. And then also kills floodgates, random monsters. Like I killed a barrier statue. I killed D-Fisher with this. So I think it's absolutely worth playing in that regard. Now, it's also nice about Dryden's is that you can pop your own cards. So there are often times when you can put a Kaleido Heart next to your Dryden's, and you can pop it with the Kaleido Heart, pop it with the Trident, and the Kaleido Heart will come back, send any to your card. You can send a Scream to search like a Crime or a Sullik, Sullik to search a monster. You can send a Tear Maim and then fuse against into multiple Tear Fusions, which is helpful. So all of which were very good. What also is nice about it that is kind of less talked about is it helps you play on evenly match. Ending on Trident plus Kaleido and maybe a Sullik, for example, means if you get evenly matched, you can go Trident chain, target the Kaleido Heart. It dies, you banish the Trident, Kaleido Heart comes back, you send you fuse, you make a Recolosaurus to Pelia off of that, and you still have the Sullik as well to defend yourself. So you're going to end up with still very layered interrupts. And then when you send off the Sullik, you can trigger the Kaleido Heart. You have many ways to defend yourself still, and it's not that simple for your opponents to win the game just with evenly, even if you don't have Crime. Those cards performed extremely well for me. I summoned them maybe as much as Dweller, and if you don't believe me, go check out that VOD. Trust me, I summoned them a bunch and they are very good. I do expect to see them being played in a lot more tier decks. They felt staple to me. They were better than Redo, better than Daguerre's, absolutely. So please give them a shot. They are 100% worth it. I know there's a lot of space, but they are insane. Lastly, we got Gigantic Sprite. This is the last card I included because I felt Elf was a little underwhelming at times. This lets you make a 3200 beat stick, which can clear the big fusions, and then also make Zeus on top. Now, you could go a step further and play Downward Magician to have a 4 material Zeus, the same you would have a Zodiac combo, which is something I did consider doing. However, the Gigantic already comes up way less than the Zoo cards, so I felt like the Downward wasn't as important. Downward is probably my 16th card in the extra deck I would like to include. I was back and forth between that and Redoer. Both came up extremely infrequently, so I'm not really sure which is better. But for now, I kept Redoer in because sometimes you can just get in a bricky situation where you need to detach the Sharon or the Rhino for Redoer to get complete value. Okay, so that was my main deck. I guess I'm going to quickly discuss why I don't play a couple cards. Why no Ash Blossom? Well, for the mirror match, it is not particularly good. We saw in the TCG that it wasn't being played almost at all in the main deck, except by sprites. Now, Ash is good if your approach to this type of deck is you want to stop them from playing altogether and try and suffocate them. This oftentimes is not a successful approach. You will not actually be able to do that. It is better off to try and combat their resource game a little better and try and break the field than it is to completely suffocate them. And by that reason, Ash just doesn't make the cut. It's also very vulnerable to chain blocking, meaning you can't always do it at the time you want to. Part of the reason why Imperm is good is you can hit something like Kid Kalos, but half the time you can't even Ash Kid Kalos. Also, the Kid Kalos would then have the other effect, which isn't blocked off by the Ash. I know Called by the Grave. It deals with Maxi as well. Well, for one, Maxi isn't that big of a problem with this deck, and this applies to why Ash isn't good either. If you normal Rhino Heart get effect, and then you get Maxied, you can make the kit, search a trap, or Scream. Usually Scream if you don't already have, if you have any other defensive cards, and then you pass and you're good. You don't actually need to do much more. Obviously, you'd like to do more, but it's not a necessity to winning the game. You can very easily win games without it. So it's not important to hyperfixate on that. And then Callby has other weak spots. For example, if you hit anything with Callby that's not a card that needs to stay in the grave, they can change a shuffler to it and then the effect will still resolve. So cards like Maxi, Crow, Ash even, or shufflers, or sorry, millers will still trigger, meaning that Callby often isn't great. The same applies if your opponent plays Snow. That's not a given, but sometimes if they have a Snow in the grave, it means your Callby is even less effective there. And then obviously you can't use it on your opponent's first turn. So you're giving up utility spots for something that's primarily for going first. And I do think it is worse for going second than Talents is. Because while Talents isn't insane going second like other hand traps are, it is definitely more usable than something like Call by the Grave. So we also talked about in the last video why we cut cards like Divine of the Heralds, King of the Swamp, Foolish Burial, Foolish Burial Goods. Now, it's important to note you'll see that I do side Foolish Burial Goods. I think that card is the only of the three that is worth playing properly because it is strong. However, I think it is extremely bad into Abyss Dweller, and if I have to cut cards for it from the main deck, I don't want to take out more cards that are bad going second, and I can't really take out any other going first cards. However, once you have the Rainbow Bridge in your deck, getting to Planet is extremely good, and therefore Goods is insane. If you can resolve it without a Dweller in the way, then it's nice. So it is a good card, but you have to be careful not to blow too much in your deck based off synergy, otherwise you will just lose going second. As for the other cards, King of the Swamp trades extremely poorly. Without multiple tier names in your hand, you can't use the Poly straight away for anything meaningful. Guardian Chimera is not good. So oftentimes it just sits there dead, and you're just putting a card in the grave you can fuse with, which is low value. Half the time, if your fusions are resolving, you're in a good spot anyways, but getting going means you have to get the fusions going, and you can't. King of Swamp doesn't help you do that, nor provide significant value in any other way. And it's not helpful for going second either. So Diviner of the Heralds eats up a normal summon that could be used on a Rhino Heart or a Shuffler, and then it sends a Miller to the Grave to start, which isn't a fantastic way to start the game because both players can play immediately. That's the biggest kind of thing I have with it. Using Millers aggressively is fine as long as you have some sort of setup to deal with what they mill, or some sort of guarantee in your own. But if you're on your end, but if you go Diviner send thing as your first action, send a Miller, you're probably not that setup. And as for Foolish Burial, same thing as Foolish Goods. It doesn't go play well into Dweller, but it's not even that strong going first because you're already going to see most of these effects anyways. So Foolish is just worse than Goods going first, and then just as bad going second. So I would not play it at all. Anyways, that's it for the main deck. Let me go into the side deck real quick. Okay, so here I have a tier element side deck I used. It's a little bit botched because I didn't have all the cards crafted, and I didn't want to burn gems on the side deck for a lot of cards. It seemed replaceable. That's why there's one Lightning Storm, one Evenly, and one Veiler. Logic here was I could put the Veilers in the Bells and have more defensive cards in going second versus Elements and side out a lot of the cards that are worse going second. Bad into Mills or whatever. Cards like Crime, which are not that good, and Nagito even. And then going first, I could side in the 3 Goods and the Bridge to have access to, and the Tortoise obviously, have access to the field spell way more often when I went first in any matchup. And then the rest of the spots were dedicated to just back removal because I expect stun players. I played one in Swiss, a Barrier Statue stun. I played Exorcister, I played Flu. So to all those things, you want to have some back removal and just some general removal to make sure you don't just die to a single Macrocosmos. So yeah, I think this was pretty self-explanatory of a side deck. Still not in that much fear of Maxi. Still nothing of Shifter. If someone shifters you, you need, and you're asking why I put Callby in the Grave in my deck, why it's not there. There's no chance you'll even draw the Callby, but also you can still win the game through Shift at that point because they need to then kill you in the next turn, otherwise you're off Shifter. And half the time these decks can't actually do good enough of a setup that you will lose on the spot. And it's not like you can't play under Shifter entirely. Oftentimes you end on a Trident, and sometimes that can just be enough to be fine. Okay, that's it for now, guys. Maybe I'll include some clips at the end of this. If not, I will see you guys next time. So what's it do again? Okay. Of course, Machiavelli, yep. I'm debating if I summon them early. That's what I'm thinking about. If I summon it here, I wait. Try no scream, I guess. I did not. Probably has another monster, which is why I have to do this here, because it's gonna summon another beer anyways. It's annoying. Million Scream would be really nice there, because then he's forced to go battle first. Let's take way less damage. I also sell it because now I don't need more targets for this. And none of those matter. Macro. Oh, come on. That's his last card. Set. Okay. What the hell is this back row? Or their back row, I don't know. Gender, sorry. I want to clear this. We can't attack over the Trident. The Trident's gonna cause problems for them. I want to play around him drawing judgments off the top. Clear this. I'm so confused what back row is. It's not I want Zeus here, like, probably, right? Like, am I attacking into Waking the Dragon right now if I Zeus? Like, is that what's gonna happen? Waking the Dragon here? I'm so confused what the back row are. Play into Waking the Dragon is the question. Either way, I want the beater. I think I'm just gonna use it. Let's see what happens. Surrenders. You just assume they go first? No, definitely not. You never, well, you guys are saying it like if it's bad to go second, but there's a good chance he's supposed to go second. Does Scream Live? Surely I do, yeah. Because I want this to be like in play, but I think giving him a draw to sell against Scream Live is worth it. I will probably not be something off it. That's fine. Snow, fantastic. Solid is fantastic as well. That was perfect. I mean, I love the shuffler, I guess, but it's still very, very good for me. He's not a game with my ability. It is. It really is. I'll rock with you. Cross out for Selic. Okay, so that means I'm not going to select here, which is fine. I'm going to cross out Shuffler. No, okay. That's rough. They are desperate. That means it's not a Selic face down, right? That means also one less good card from the mill. I think if this is Imperm, I don't want to play into it. I think I'm at advantage here. I don't want to give him the chance to 2 for 1. I'm okay 1 for 1 and calling it a day. The top 3. Do I chain this? I think I do, yeah. And then I'll resolve. Hit Scream, I hit him early. I mean, the trigger he goes Shuffler, right? And then I have to chain line, so I'm not doing anything. It's okay. If I have Selic, then let me kill back here. I'm hoping I play into Talents. I'm supposed to let this rock. Ugh. This is a weird situation. I'm actually the Talents. What does the Talents do? I don't have a field. They can draw a card. They can deck draw 2. I'm fine with them draw 2 because under max C. I think it's high reward and risk is middle. I want to die here is the thing. And Snow's not amazing because it's going to be forced out relatively easily. There's no. Ground snow, right? Defense mode player on stuff there. Player in heaviness. Okay, so it's called by. Okay, so there's no talents. Okay. No, they couldn't use that call by. Because I was holding the Miller, or my shuffler in case that call by. They knew that. That was really good. I just do that now, right? It's already negated, though, the thing. Maybe it's go battle phase first. But battle phase, they sell like diffuse, and L3. This does very little, so I don't care that much. I know it's no maxing hands on or Crow or Kelbeck or anything, so I can be pretty aggressive. Main phase 2, and it's not shuffler either. They could have snowed me there, that's probably what I should have done. And then I have this. Wait, did they know I have this? They don't. Yeah, they probably just snowed me. It's fine. I'm gonna have this here. Even not guarantee the trigger, fine. Should have 6 cards here pretty much in the battle phase. And this green also means now the snow threatens to kill Kit. So if it doesn't fuse it away, then I just attack over it. Okay, Rhino's pretty insane. Okay, so the one that got called by is Sharon. Oh, I can't use Sharon, I got called by. So I activate though. Heaviness. Do I want to Rhino? Probably, right? Just all feel for snow. I'll chain block the Heaviness here, even though it does nothing. Droplets, not as expected. They have to send trap here, otherwise I chain solid crit. What effects do I use to fuse? They still have snow, have to be careful of. That's my grave, Sharon. Really? I think I attach the snow. Okay, it doesn't matter. Okay. Yes, fine. My last attack is Merly, right? I haven't almost done yet, so I can almost do this later. I just want to hit shufflers now. And feel my snow. Keep picking from early. Okay, didn't hit. We hit shufflers though. Do we hit anything there so we can dark that's useful? Not really. So I'm not using early yet. I don't even want to beach anyways, right? Yeah. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm happy with that fight up. They're attacking that. Okay. This game's over. Yeah, we can play on our turn. We just go try and pop this and we can kill him. I don't know why I'm shuffling back, it doesn't matter. Giant, get in there! I'm just BMing, I shouldn't do this. Ugh. Alright, I'm down. Hey, the old man music is some of my favorite.